Welcome to the Irish NFL show. This is our Week 11 preview show. The Falcons, Colts, Patriots and Saints are the four teams on byes this week. And we've no early afternoon Sunday games either, I'm afraid, as the NFL International Series is officially now at an end for the season. We do, however, get a little bit of NFL flavour on home soil this weekend, though, as the Pittsburgh Steelers host a watch party in Croke Park on Sunday for 400 of the faithful gathering there on Jones's Road. The Steelers' own crucial division clash with the Browns, rather, is one of the two games being screened by Buskers on the Ball in Temple Bar in Dublin. Buskers will be showing that game at 6. They'll be showing Bucks at Niners from 9 and Red Zone all night long. There's free figure food for group bookings of 5 or more. And our first section of game previews and picks is brought to you by RuPoint, demonstrating the value of global PR and comms. You can see how RuPoint can help your business at rupoint.com. Now, Thursday night football might have been lacking in fireworks so far this season, but we've a big time matchup in that window this week as the Bengals take on the Ravens. And Brian, both teams looking to bounce back from last-minute defeats at the weekend.
Doing a Thursday night football a bit of a disservice there, Connor. And your Bears win last Thursday night against the Panthers in a really enticing one.
One for the ages, yeah.
Like, we normally record a Thursday night football preview with Andrew Morgan, and last week, as we closed it, I said, look, there's good things to come, and I certainly think this one in particular is going to be a cracking game. One of the storylines for me leading into this is, when are the NFL going to catch up with the Bengals on this Joe Burrow injury? Because playing silly boogers with the rulings around the league of when you should be declaring players on the injury list. They rocked up to the stadium yesterday for their practice session, and Joe Burrow had a particular piece on his hand, which kind of led everybody to believe it was an injury of some sort. And then the social media team quickly took the video down thereafter. The video was deleted very quickly, which for me kind of spells someone quickly knocked on the door to said, get that video down before the NFL pick up on the fact that we haven't declared him as a potential injury concern for this game. But there is injury concerns for the Bengals. We saw it last week, obviously not having the full frontal in terms of all their wide receivers available to them. It's a very slow start from it. Kind of reminds me, and we spoke about it kind of around, we kind of start the season this kind of slow. It doesn't really kick into gear. It took them a long time to kick into gear. I think whilst the Texans got over the line, I think the Bengals got back into the game more so because the Texans are getting to that stage where they're figuring out how to close out games, and the inexperience in that situation kind of led to silly plays. But Joe Burrow looked off last week. There was a number of interceptions, in particular the one in the red zone when they looked like they were getting back into the game. For me, the Bengals need to have everybody firing to win this game. I know the Ravens kind of let one slip there last weekend, but still, I think we can all take confidence in the fact that they still put up 30 points in a Browns defense last weekend. They're still going very much in the right direction. It's a home game. And if the Ravens were to win this one, bearing in mind they beat the Bengals on the road already, that's a two-game cushion in terms of even, the head-to-heads and obviously the comfort within the division. I have to side with the Ravens. I think we're going to see the mark come out here. I think it's going to be a struggle for the Bengals. I think the Ravens defense will find ways to get to Joe Burrow, put him off kilter. I think the Ravens get out of this game in Thursday Night Football with a huge AFC North win.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of the Bengals. Now, obviously, I picked them for the Super Bowl before the season and didn't count for that Joe Burrow injury, which I guess nobody accounted for. These things happen. When they took care of the 49ers, I thought, yeah, they're back. They're back exactly at the high-octane best that we know they can produce. And they are a big game team. So my initial leaning in this one was, well, generally when the Bengals have to have it, they come out and they produce something and they get it. But I was surprised at the way they went down to the Texans last week. Now, all of CJ Stroud and the Texans' good play considered, and the two picks for Burrow, I take under advisement, as you say, Brian. He still throws for 347 yards and a couple of touchdowns. And if Tyler Boyd holds on to probably the most straightforward catch that Tyler Boyd had all day, they actually still win that game. Good and all as the Texans were, and they would have gotten over those two interceptions. But at the same time, I take your point on the Ravens' defense has been so good. They lead the league in sacks. They're spreading the sacks around as well. They're one of those defenses that can hit you and hurt you from a lot of different angles. Burrow's been taking a lot of sacks as well of late. Back to the form of a couple of seasons ago, that Bengals offensive line where they are a little bit leaky. And Texans got to him, and that certainly helped their cause. I'm with you, though. I'm also trying to figure out which team needs this more, because both of them haven't actually performed particularly well in their own division. Surprisingly, the Ravens have dropped a couple of bad ones. They dropped that one last week to the Browns. They dropped one to the Steelers, obviously, when they look to have it wrapped up. Classic Steelers performance there, and we'll get to the Steelers a little bit later. But they're still on balance. I think the team more likely to win this one. I don't think the Bengals are firing on all cylinders. If they can and do, I would back them. And we've seen them come out of a lot of tight spots. So maybe they'll prove us wrong. But I'm going Ravens in this one as well. Colin.
I think the AFC North is akin to Wacky Races. Do you remember that wonderful cartoon? And there was all sorts of thrills and spills and the mystery machines that you would see. And you had Muttley giggling away at whatever misfortune befell his opponents. That's what the AFC North feels like. The Ravens should win this, I think, because the Bengals are struggling with injury. But I think the Bengals need this more. I think if the Bengals don't win this, it certainly ends any hope of winning the division. And it puts a huge dent, I feel, in their playoff push, and potentially, like, this could be one. If the Ravens get the win here, I just think that they will be able to lord it over the Bengals for quite some time. I really think the Ravens are fantastic. I was talking them up all last week, but I just think that necessity is the mother of all invention. And I think that the Ravens' habit of giving away games late against a team who can score and score quickly could be an Achilles heel. And if anything, this should be good news for Ravens fans, because it means that we aren't in lockstep. I'm going to say that Joe Burrow and the Bengals find a way. And this is against a Ravens team. The defense has given them issues, but I'm going to say that they managed to get it done, to keep it on track. And the AFC North continues to be a roller coaster.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm nervous picking against the Bengals because I know what they can do. We know how explosive they can be. And I know you spoke to Mo Egger from ESPN Cincinnati column for a podcast this week, which is well worth checking out wherever you get your podcast for the Irish NFL show. And I'll throw in the usual reminder, please, to like and subscribe wherever you find the content, because it helps others to find us more easily as well.
Connor, I thought Colin was going to go down the Bafink route, because I thought maybe Bafink and that shield, that's my Joe Burrow may need that at some stage, even if they get up to speed and get and go after him. But no, maybe he has that one in the locker for another game, another day.
Yeah, let's hope he doesn't end up like Penelope Pitstop in peril. Right, we move on to Cardinals at Texans, and Kyler Murray was back. Kyler Murray was doing all of that fun stuff that we associated him with, showing no ill effects from the ACL, doing one of his classic 80-yard scrambles to make 20 yards, but gets in for a score, delights the coach there, Jonathan Gannon, and look back to the sort of fun that we know he can deliver. But he's up against CJ Stroud, who has impressed us, and we've talked about him on the show for the last couple of weeks. Just the poise he's shown, the things he's doing, the way he's able to close out games, and the way the Texans are now very much legitimate playoff contenders here. Is this the Stroud show keeping on going, or do the Cardinals find a way to pull one out?
Well, I think the Cards are with Kyler back, and we talked about it on Tuesday's show, Connor, about how no ill effects. But this is about the Texans. This is about CJ Stroud, and CJ Stroud is. Do you remember Hong Kong Phooey? Which is a massively underrated cartoon. But basically...
What a great theme song as well.
Oh, classic theme song. But if people haven't seen it or people don't remember it, it was a dog janitor who learned Kung Fu through a mail order catalog. And he was just fantastic. And CJ Stroud looks like he has the catalog from Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Dan Marino. I mean, this is an incredible incredibly impressive rookie season. I mean, we are entering the territory of the kind of Dan Marino-esque. Now he's got to make the playoffs for that, but certainly if you were to look at, like, he's in a much worse situation than, say, Ben Roethlisberger when Big Ben came in. RG3 obviously had a great rookie campaign as well, but he has been immensely impressive. DeMeco Ryans has been immensely impressive. They're making the most of what they have, and I just don't think that they are going to take their eye off of what they're endeavoring to achieve. I don't think they will be looking beyond the Cardinals. And though I expect the Cardinals to be feisty, I think that the Texans should be able to get the victory here at home, and they keep that storyline alive, and people, maybe begin the odds shorten on CJ Stroud as a potential MVP candidate, though that's a long shot, but he's absolutely shoe-in to be Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Brian, this one might have seemed almost a gimme a couple of weeks ago for the Texans. Kyler back definitely makes it a little bit more entertaining. I think this is one of the ones, and there's some great games this weekend, one of the ones that I'm certainly looking forward to. Do you think that closes the gap a little bit, or is it Texans for you as well?
Yeah, I certainly think it does close the gap. He was 19 of 32 for 249 last week. I mean, that's a stellar performance for a guy who hasn't played in a year. Let's be fair. I know he threw it at one pick, but I suppose it wasn't so much the numbers that everybody's kind of getting drawn into. It was more so the plays and how he escaped the pocket so many times, and then obviously scores a touchdown, which he's doing exactly what he used to do. But yeah, I'm trying to. The Texans for me remind me of the Giants last year. New head coach, new field factor, new team. Okay, different quarterback. And it was this weekend last year when teams starting to go belly up for the Giants. I'm going to go with the Cardinals to cause an upset, because when you get on such a crest of a wave and you're winning games, there's always this flat game where everybody assumes you're going to continue to build on the momentum. And it usually comes after you've had a big win against one of the marquee teams. I think the gap is reduced significantly. I was looking through all the various stats today in the game, quite even. A lot of people suggesting it's a one-score game. I'm going to go for the Cards to cause an upset. We were talking about Connor, I remember there was one episode when Colin wasn't available, and we spoke about how well the Cards do for 3 quarters, but they can't obviously get themselves over the line, and because of the nature of where they were offensively. But I think Conor Murray's the springboard that kind of changes that for me. I'm going to go with them to cause the upset and beat the Texans.
Interesting. I'm laughing at the two analogies you've chosen there. I hope you're not cursing CJ Stroud with just enough greatness never to win a Super Bowl like Dan Marino had, or with a terrible second season sophomore effort as the Giants had this season post that first Brian Daboll feel-good factor season. I'm going with the Texans here again, not without going back and forth in my own mind based on all we've just said. I think Kyler being back has made a massive difference. Clearly made a massive difference last week. Just think what we've seen from the Texans the last few weeks is a really impressive body of work, which by the standards of this season means I really should go fully in the other direction and pick the Cardinals, because the Texans seem to be just at that point of the curve where this season has proven to be the downfall of most teams. But no, I think they'll pull this one out. I'm going Texans in this one, I have to say. Right, Bears at Lions is the next game up. Maybe I'll jump in here given my own fan leanings. Justin Fields returns. Makes a big difference. Obviously, Tyson Bagent has done really well in relief, an undrafted free agent. It's been one of the the good feel-good stories of the season from his perspective. Got a couple of wins under his belt. Got more wins under his belt so far this season than Justin Fields, it has to be said. This is an interesting one for a couple of reasons for me. Games running out in the season and time running out in Justin Fields' Bears career. He's really got to start putting some wins on the board very quickly. I am not so sure, unfortunately, that Ford Field is going to be the place where he gets one. I think the Lions looked good last week against the Chargers, albeit it gives me hope that they managed to give up 38 points. They did manage to score 41. They've bounced back nicely from that mauling they got from the Ravens. I think this is a spicy enough game, because I do think the Bears defensively have been playing a lot better, albeit against relatively limited opposition the last couple of weeks. But they've held their own. They held their own against the Vikings, which was one of the better defensive performances. Eberflus looks finally like he's getting something together there. Montez Sweat has definitely made a difference since he's come in. And the Bears offense, although Tyson Bagent is very, very limited, to give him his due, it's looked well under Luke Getz. He's been getting the ball out quickly and doing the things that you think probably would be keys to Justin Fields' success. If you plug in Justin Fields into that offense the way they've been playing over the last couple of weeks, you ideally take advantage of his talent, and we can keep down some of the things that have been going wrong. I think it becomes much better from a Bears perspective. And this doesn't come up like a Bears win for me, though. I'm going Lions in this one. Colin, what do you reckon?
To continue the analogies, do you remember the banana splits? Talking about theme tunes, for me, the best theme tune on any children's TV show, and the absolute madness. And it featured actually a lion and a bear, fittingly, but it was utter chaos for the entirety of it. But it was wonderfully entertaining, and that is the Detroit Lions of 2023. I think they, outside of when the Ravens obviously did a number on them, they've been immensely impressive. I think Ben Johnson is an absolute shoo-in to be a head coach next year. I think they've done a decent job on the defense, and even with Fields returning and the feel-good factor that will bring, for me, the Lions will have too much. And I think with the fact that the Eagles are going into a stretch of games that is incredibly tough, and as we have seen, the Niners, as I've said repeatedly, the best starters, but if the Niners get a few injuries, you'd worry. It's not beyond the realms of possibility, but they have to win all their games, that the Lions could get the number 1 seed. Imagine if all roads led through Detroit. Now that would be quite the story, and I think that they are getting the win here.
Brian, a lot of things going well for the Lions this season. Obviously, Dan Campbell's nerves have been one of them. We talked about his fourth down cojones in the last game. But defensively, they still have work to do. I mean, they were gutted by Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert last week, and that's something that would slightly concern them going into this game, I would imagine. Yeah,
I called that last Thursday. I went for the Chargers. I thought maybe we've seen kind of some cracks in their defense over the course of the last weeks. Brian Branch, the second round safety, hasn't been playing at the level which we saw. Hutchinson hasn't been powering or domineering in terms of how he was earlier on in the season. I think that Thursday night game against the Packers, he was untouchable. And it hasn't really transpired. They've been giving away points. In fact, the Raiders even had some opportunities which went to miss on the Monday Night Football a couple of weeks ago. But in this game, I think they're going to roll into town and roll out with a comfortable victory. And it's the 1-2 punch for me right now. It's getting Montgomery back 116 yards last week, and obviously your touchdown, you never saw him, roll down the perimeter with a 76-yarder touchdown like that when he was with the Bears. But he might want to remind the Bears of what they're missing. Remember when we had Adam Rank on?
That's another interesting one, actually, for the GM there, to give him his due, and to Dan Campbell. There's a lot of question marks over what was perceived as an overreach for Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round, and a lot of people wonder, why would you blow up what was a good backfield, a successful backfield for them last season? But they saw what they wanted, and they appear to me to have upgraded what they had there.
Yeah, and don't forget, like, they lost Jamal Williams in free agency. He went to the Saints, and he hasn't got going since he went there because he's been plagued with injuries. He had 17 touchdowns for them last year. Now, a lot of them were in the red zone. But there was questions and eyebrows raised about the fact they released him, didn't renew his contract in free agency last year. He went to free agency, and then obviously bringing in Montgomery, people felt it was a bit of a reach. I remember just about to say Adam Rank came on there in the offseason, and he said Montgomery's a much better running back than Williams, and he'll prove it very quickly when he goes to Detroit. I could see them running the ball effectively throughout the course of the game and grinding the Bears defense down. Nothing but a Lions win for me.
All right, Cowboys at Panthers. Now, depending on what your view of the Cowboys is, this is either an absolute shellacking for the Panthers, or this is classically the game where the Cowboys fall over, as they have done earlier this season against the Cardinals. Column. Cowboys convincing favourites in this one. They're double-digit favourites with the bookies. Everyone expecting them to take this one convincingly after what they did to the Giants last week, what CeeDee Lamb has been doing in recent weeks, and what that Cowboys defence has been doing all season long, more or less, bar that game against the 49ers. And as we said, the banana skin, to continue your banana analogy, against the Cardinals. Is this one where the Panthers somehow take one against the head, or is it all Cowboys all the time?
The Cowboys are the Flintstones. I mean, they are ubiquitous. They are everywhere. But Jerry Jones is probably Fred because he finds himself in these terrible situations of his own making all the time, and requires other people to endeavor to bail him out. The Cowboys are prone, as we have noted in the past, to looking beyond games. And Jane Slater, who's a good friend of this show, was actually talking about it during the week. And Jane was saying, well, they're not looking past it, but they're conscious where they're. That's a worry, and it would be a worry if it was anyone other than the Carolina Panthers. Once again, I haven't seen it confirmed, but the video reemerged. Reemerged, depends. Some people are saying it's new, some people are saying it's from 6 months ago, of Tepper talking about how they had a deal to like go to number 2, and then that changed. Like, again, it made no sense. Like, what are you saying? That you were going to take CJ Stroud, but then you had the number 1 pick. So if you wanted CJ Stroud, you could have taken CJ Stroud. And that just feels like a man. Talked about it on Tuesday about Sean McDermott being Billy Zane in Titanic. David Tepper does no wrong whatsoever, and your billions allow you to do that. People will, will tell you that you do no wrong. I just think things are not right in Carolina, and I think it's going to be between them and another franchise for the number 1 overall pick, which they don't have because they gave it away. So I think that this should be the Cowboys, and if they step on yet another banana skin, it really would lead, because again, it's hilarious how it goes, right? All the talk about the Cowboys, they meet the 49ers, and then we're back to, well, we're being more realistic. And now all of a sudden it's like, Dak's playing the best football of his career. CeeDee Lamb's incredible. Oh, could it be the Cowboys here? No, but they're winning this game.
Yeah, if it was any other team, I could talk myself into thinking that this is your classic Cowboys hubris moment. But I saw all I needed to see at the Panthers in Thursday Night Football last week. They made the Bears look so good with Tyson Bagent playing at quarterback. Like, I just don't see any way, hope, or form, bar a miraculous series of terrible refereeing decisions, or, God forbid, a whole raft of injuries on the Cowboys side. This is a Dallas win all day long for me. Brian, see it any differently?
No, not in this case. I have seen concept about emerging videos and emerging stories, but it's emerging again today that Frank Reich and all likelihood may be relieved of his duties coming in the season. Essentially, it's probably down to the relationship he has with the owner. He's going to be one and done. And this is the man who, when he got the job, said it was always a part of my plan to move back and live in Carolina. So it's even better that I get to coach in Carolina. But unfortunately, he might be staying there, but he may not have his key card allowing him into the facilities for much longer, judging by the nature of the conversation and storyline that's coming out to save him. Cowboys got criticised a little bit this week, and not by the people within the Giants scorers, of running up the score last week. There was certain players towards the end of the game when most teams was going to just eat the clock, but they were going for third and ones and throwing spirals, and even Greg Olsen in the commentary was asking the question, and they'll probably do the same again this weekend, which will only heighten the enormity and expectations on this team if they run up another high score going into Thursday night on Thanksgiving, which they've only won.
The Cowboys don't run up the scoreboard. That's why they got rid of Kellen Moore last year.
Well, that was on another podcast this morning. The fact that Kellen Moore was destroying McCarthy with run plays and then deviating. So there was a story on the McCarthy would say to him in the year, "I'd be afraid to run a run play this time." And he go, "Yeah, I'm with you. I got it." And then of course he would then allow Dak to kind of audible out of that and into a run play, into a pass play. Anyway. Point being, they win this game convincingly, heightens the expectation for Thursday night, Thanksgiving, playing the Commanders. I think they've only won 1 of the last 8 games on Thanksgiving. And the pressure will be on because the Commanders will always give them a tough game in the NFC East. But for this game, I think we all know the outcome. Inevitable. Panthers go down, Cowboys win.
Right, the final game of our first segment column is Raiders at Dolphins. Dolphins off a bye. Their last time out, they lost narrowly in Frankfurt to the Chiefs. Showed very well defensively, and kept the Chiefs down to 14 offensive points. And we're running the ball well the second half, and just couldn't quite complete the comeback effort. The Raiders, as we know, have been going well under Antonio Pierce. The relief rally from the Josh McDaniels exit continues. Will it roll on for another week?
I don't think so. I think this is the week where the Scooby-Doo crew catch up with the monster and reveal that it isn't a monster at all. It is Mark Davis under the mask and his haircut, which is truly terrifying. He's the man at the heart of all of the Raiders' problems, the guy who's made the appointments that he has. The Raiders have looked infinitely better over the past couple of weeks, which is unsurprising, and was anyone prior to Josh McDaniels being hired could have told you that. Anyone in the week 1 of Josh McDaniels' era, the week 2, the week 52, the week 63, anybody knew what it was going to be like once he moved on. But they're meeting a Dolphins team who I think have a bit more about them. Again, if it was in Vegas, I think it could be different. But Mike McDaniel will have had 2 weeks to think about this, to scheme things up. And I think the Raiders roster is a lot better. It's funny because I really didn't rate the Raiders, and some of their fans understandably as fans were very annoyed by that. But a big part of that was the Josh McDaniels. I think the roster isn't terrible, and I think they will be competitive. But ultimately, Dolphins seem to be getting players back. Josh McDaniels has had 2 weeks to plan. He talked about after the loss in Germany.
Josh McDaniels has a lot longer than 2 weeks to plan. Mike McDaniel had 2 weeks.
Mike McDaniel, of course. Mike McDaniel talked about after the game in Germany how he wasn't going to sleep on the flight, and he was probably going to be awake for the next 2 weeks. Well, he's had it, and much like we saw Kyle Shanahan last week after 2 weeks against the Jags, I think the Dolphins should be wonderfully entertaining this week.
Yeah, this is the one that's actually a crucial point to prove for the Dolphins, right? They famously have all their wins against sub-500 teams and lose to all the teams with winning records. The Raiders obviously bang on the 500 line, so this is the test. Can they get one over against a team 500 or above? I think yes, absolutely they can, and I think they will too. Looks like they may have Devon Achane back as well, which adds to their running threat. I thought one of the things that arguably cost them the game against the Chiefs, and we talked about it the other week, Brian, is that they kind of went away from Raheem Mostert, who was tearing them up at 4 or 5 yards a clip and doing a really good job for them against the Chiefs in that game. Defensively, as you say, Colin, they've got a couple of players back. Ramsey's got a couple of weeks under his belt now. I think coming off a bye, McDaniel schemes his way to a fairly comfortable win in the end. I don't think this one is going to be that close, and I think Pierce will be back to the drawing board after this one.
Can't disagree. They've been averaging 30 points a game at home this season. Dolphins, I think their red zone efficiency numbers are off the charts, in terms of how many times they go into the end zone when they get to the red zone. Bearing in mind how important numbers have been over the course of the season, they're kind of one of the leading nights in this situation. And having watched that Sunday night football game, I know the Jets defense arguably is one of the best in the league, and people keep referring to that, but the Raiders struggled for large parts. They didn't run the ball on them, but they should have, because that's one of the weaknesses of the Jets defense, with the exception of that 164-yard rush by Jacobs, where Sauce Gardner completely missed the tackle. Just like to call that out. He's supposed to be, this quarterback of the future, can't tackle very properly. And they struggled offensively as well for that. Sorry, defensively, we're gonna see Vic Fangio go up against a rookie quarterback as well. So I think where the Dolphins defense is going, it's nothing but this is blowout material for me.
Right, and that concludes our first segment of games on our Week 11 previews. We start our second segment with Steelers at Browns. This one was looking like a really mouth-watering AFC North clash in the same week where we get, of course, Ravens-Bengals on Thursday Night Football. Unfortunately, Deshaun Watson has gone down with an injury column, so that takes a little bit of the anticipation out of it, unfortunately. But the Browns coming off that big win against the Ravens with that walk-off field goal. Steelers, of course, 6-3, finding ways every single week with particularly impressive takeaways when they need them most. Another one against Jordan Love and the Packers when they were driving down the field to score and take a win. They're now 6-3, and lo and behold, the Browns roll up with DRT at quarterback. It looks like they're not even going with PJ Walker. They're going with the guy we thought was number 3, who in his last outing put up 120 yards passing, I think, on below 50% completions and 3 picks, no touchdowns. Do you see any way that the Browns can get the win here?
It's possible, but it's unlikely. And I think the worry for the Browns is, Deshaun Watson played the best football of his career with a broken shoulder. Best football of his Browns career, which is telling of how his Browns career has gone thus far. But that's an injury to the throwing shoulder. He's had knee injuries. He's had time off for wanting a trade, B, numerous transgressions. This guy hasn't played consistently well for 4 years, and he's now having more surgery. This is unbelievable. Like, this guy has a cap hit of 64 million for the next 3 years. Like, where do you even begin with what this is? Like, you can't get away from that. Like, I saw some
64 million and CJ Stroud and Will Anderson. That was what they gave up effectively.
Like, I saw some crazy Broncos fan be like, why is Brock Purdy, being considered good as a game manager and Russell Wilson is getting criticism? Because Russell Wilson has a giant contract. That changes everything. You cannot get away from the giant guaranteed contract that you cannot get out of, especially when he's injured, because player contracts in the league are generally only guaranteed for injury. Brian was talking about Frank Reich. Frank Reich will be a very rich man if he does get fired. But the Browns decided in their infinite wisdom to make this fully guaranteed. So you've got to feel a little bit for the fans there and for the defense, which is
I'm throwing my CV in for that Texas A&M job, by the way. Jimbo Fisher on his 72 million for price for failure. How hard can it be to be a college football coach?
Well, if you've ever seen the infamous interview where he said, like, what did you say when they told you were going to be fired? What time do you need me to have my desk cleared? But you go back, like, the Browns, the defense has been playing so well, and it's so difficult to maintain defensive dominance. It's actually easier to maintain offensive dominance year in, year out than it is to maintain defensive dominance. They will make it difficult, but they're beginning to be banged up on both sides of the ball now. The Steelers have a Kenny Pickett problem, and he's not the answer. He's not the answer long term. He's not it. But they're winning in spite of that, and they're winning because Mike Tomlin does a better job than anybody of bringing players together. But they've got to get Kenny Pickett and Matt Canada out of the building. But I just think that they should have enough against a Browns team. This will be low scoring. But if you were going into a low scoring game, like, who would you want, as your head coach other than Mike Tomlin in a divisional game where he gets to inflict more misery on a divisional rival in a week where they're reeling a little bit?
Brian, Aidan, our behind-the-scenes guru on the show and erstwhile leader of the picks competition, picked the Steelers to win the Super Bowl. And as each week passes, I'm starting to think that he knows something that we don't, and only Mike Tomlin does, because they're almost getting to the stage. A couple more wins, and I'll start believing that the name is on the cup here, because week after another, things fall for them. Things are going their way. I have the Steelers in this one, but I do see a path to victory for the Browns, who can get after Kenny Pickett and cause serious problems for this underperforming Steelers offense. If there's a defense that can show up apart from the Steelers, it's certainly the Browns defense, albeit they gave up 30 points last week, and we shouldn't forget that. I don't necessarily see it, but I wouldn't be completely shocked if they did. They're playing at home after all. It's a divisional rivalry, probably one of the more keenly contested in the league, very close to two teams, albeit that they're in two different states. This is the closest game, one of the closest by geographical proximity in the NFL. They hate each other. Cleveland won't want the Steelers to roll into town and get one over on them.
The only thing you made a mistake on there was the fact that you are, in fact, the leader of our picks competition. It isn't Aidan. He's fallen.
I said erstwhile leader. I was trying to be modest.
Okay. I apologize. I mean, this Steelers, I laughed at it. I laughed at it this week because I said, right, here we go. I said it on Tuesday. I'm picking the Browns. Here we go. This is the week. This, for me, is a team that are in a false position. I mean, Kenny Pickett threw for 126 yards last week. And I don't think it's been any better for over the course of the season. At some stage, your quarterback has to start winning the games. You can't go the entirety of a season. You know, I know there's quarterbacks game management, but they still find games. There is games. If you look at the content over the course of the last season, other quarterbacks, there is games where the quarterback wins in the game. I've yet to see Kenny Pickett do it. Do we throw the Ravens game in there as a game he won? Not really. The Ravens found ways, excuse me, to lose that. For me, this game ultimately comes down to who can run the ball more effective. Warren and Harris last week had really strong games, as did Chubb and Ford. For the Browns, I think they went for a combined of 176 yards. And if they can get that going, I think it relieves the pressure. Go on, sorry.
Hunt, not Chubb.
Apologies. Kareem Hunt. Yes. And they also have I wish Chubb was there. That'd be great. That would be a great start to the game for them on Sunday. Hunt and Ford, 176 yards last week. They were effective. If they can do something like that, which is very difficult against the Steelers defense, it would relieve the pressure on a young quarterback. But I do trust the Browns defense more. I think it will come down to a nip and tuck game and ultimately maybe come down to a field goal. So I'll go with a low scoring Browns win. I think they get over the line. Say something along the lines of a 13-10 type of game for me.
Interesting. You're buying into Shane Brennan's comment there that the fact that the Steelers have that watch party this weekend will put the kibosh on them, as it has for so many teams this season. Nothing like a watch party to bring down the clouds of doom on your
What you mean the party's over?
Okay, we move on to Chargers at Packers. The Packers column lost to the Steelers last week. Another closely contested game, another game decided by a late pick for the Steelers. I thought the Packers didn't look too bad, and it was one of Jordan Love's better games, albeit that he had 2 interceptions. Both of them, really good defensive plays rather than necessarily terrible throws by him. Chargers, on the other hand, again, also coming off a loss, took a bad one to the Lions that they could have won. They were explosive at times. 5 touchdown drives in a row in the second half, and Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen really feeling that connection last week. Is this a home stand for the Packers at Lambeau, or are the Chargers too much for them to handle?
This will, I suppose, a game where you've got 2 head coaches who will be very disappointed with how the season is playing out. I think ultimately Matt LaFleur is safe unless things really fall off, and unless there's an complete change, you would imagine that Brandon Staley is going to be out of a job. But they did play well last week, and this is a Packers team who they just struggle to score points. And I think if you can score points, you can take advantage of this Chargers team, because they have problems on defense. But I just don't know if, I still say the Packers should have looked to bring somebody in before the trade deadline, somebody who could, a little bit of experience to help out what is still a really, really young receiving room. And I think they're paying the price as well for sitting Jordan Love for so long. I have it as a coin flip game. But I'm going to say that Justin Herbert should have enough, and I'm going to go for the Chargers to win it.
Is it Herbert over Love for you as well, Brian?
It is, yeah, and I don't see it like that for Colin. I think this will be more of a convincing win for the Chargers. For all the flaws of the Chargers defensively, they are getting to the quarterback, with the exception of 2 games this season, last week and the week 1 game against Tua. They haven't hit the quarterback, but by and large, they've had a fruitful season in terms of getting to the quarterback and sacks. They're averaging 4 sacks per game. And I was looking at Jordan Love's numbers this week. He's yet to hit a 300-yard plus game. And I'm not necessarily saying he'd have to get to that to win this game, but I still think he's going to have to be at the 250 to 300 range to keep up with the Chargers. So for me, it's the Chargers. They haven't won an Lambeau since 1984. I think the streak finally ends and they get over the line and win this game a little bit more convincingly than Colin is suggesting.
Yeah, I have to say I agree with that. I think Packers, albeit that they did look better last week, it's 7 games in a row, I think, where they've failed to cross the 21-point threshold. It's such a difference from what we've been used to at Lambeau Field over the last 20, 30 years between the Favre and Rodgers eras. And the Chargers are one team that you're going to need generally to score a lot of points to beat, particularly based on last week's performance. Again, we saw Herbert back to his explosive best. They do have their problems. I completely see that, but I think this is one where, as you say, Brian, they're going to end that long winless streak. I see this being a Los Angeles win on the road. Brian, we move to your Giants at the Commanders this weekend. Is there any way that Tommy DeVito finally shows us something? Because this is not an easy game. At the best of times, it's a tough one for the Giants, and it's keenly fought. And the Commanders, they have teeth.
Tough one for the Giants, keenly fought, but always seem to come out the right side of when they play the Commanders. I think they've only lost 2 of the last 14 games against the Commanders. Always seem to have their number. But unfortunately, it's not going to be the case this weekend because, as you said, the Commanders are still striving to try and get themselves in the mix. I felt for them last weekend. I thought they played well enough in Seattle to win that game. I mean, for me, it's more interesting what happens next week. Tyrod Taylor is due to come off the IR, and obviously, Giants lose this game 2-9. What excuse can they use next week not to play Tyrod Taylor, which is essentially could lead to victories because they've got some winnable games such as the Packers and the Patriots to come. But they're 10-point underdogs.
It's the age-old excuse, isn't it? Oh, he's not quite ready yet.
Well, if that's the case next week, well, then we're very much throwing the towel in. But look, Danny DeVito, maybe be better off with Danny DeVito, a quarterback, as opposed to Tommy. But Tommy's going to play again this week. And I hope the guy does well because I really like to see a young quarterback have a game. But unfortunately for him, it's going to be another tough day because the Giants are missing quite a lot of players with injuries, including the number of them on the offensive line. I don't think it's going to spiral like it did last week because I think they might get a little bit of a reaction off last week's game, but ultimately I think the Commanders will win this game going away.
Yeah, I think so too. It's a horrible situation for Tommy DeVito to be in as well, where there's clearly not a lot of faith in him from the Giants coaching staff point of view as well. It's not like they're letting him just go out there and throw to the Buick. That's certainly not been the case. As you say, it's been such a closely contested game and over the years, and the Giants usually have had the Commanders' number, but I just don't see how they're going to win. I just don't see how it's possible. Like the one thing that might give me hope from a Giants perspective is that the Commanders, although they've really played well against all the better teams in the league, they laid an absolute egg against the Bears. That was comfortably the Bears' best performance of the season, and the Commanders gave up 40 points. But I think that was a slightly different, even allowing for the limitations of the Bears' offense, that was a very different scenario to the one we faced at the weekend. I just don't see any way the Giants are going to put out the win, unfortunately, from your perspective, Brian. Colm, is there a way that the G-Men come out of this one, or is it Commanders slam dunk?
Hanna-Barbera produced some of the finest cartoons of the 20th century, Connor, and the Giants and the Commanders, as they now are, produce some amazing teams. Right, you go back the 86 Giants, the 91 Washington team might be the best NFL team ever. The Brian can also relive 07 and 11. But this is the Pebbles and Bam Bam show. Like, look away. This is an awful spin-off. Nobody deserves this. The Tommy DeVito, you would be better off having a competition. Like, it would be more interesting if the Giants just did a competition during the week and you entered your name and you got to throw the ball. Well, again, if they allowed you to throw the ball. The best.
I'm going to say, by the way, on a serious note, like, if ever you wanted proof of the Colin Kaepernick blacklist, this is what you're talking about. When you see a guy like Tommy DeVito able to take the field, you're like, and they wouldn't let Colin Kaepernick back in the league? It's a joke.
But sorry, Colin, I know it's your piece, but there's other quarterbacks out there. I've no time for Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz could come in and give you a performance. Colt McCoy is out there. Colt McCoy was playing for the Cardinals up to this offseason. He was released in camp. He could come in. He played for the Giants. He went into Seattle and won a game 2 years ago. One of our former colleagues, Mark, said, if Jesus Christ is that quarterback for the Giants, they still won't win this game. Well, in fact, Colt McCoy won that game for the Giants. There is still serviceable quarterbacks available that could be brought in on a 3 or 4 week window. But we know where this is going. Like, we can all spoof it whatever way we want.
No, we do. Like the Giants, the best. If I guarantee, if you said to Joe Shane, probably more so Shane than Brian Dable, Joe, you're going to lose every single game for the rest of the season, but you won't lose by more than 10 points. He would absolutely take it right now, because now I think Daniel Jones' agent is going to be having palpitations because they're going to have to negotiate that. But when I said earlier, the only team that I think can rival the Carolina Panthers for the number 1 pick is the Giants. They're not going to put Taylor back out there. There's no way. There's a reason they're playing Tommy DeVito, whose mom makes his bed, tucks him in, gives him a hot water bottle, wakes him up in the morning.
Does a lot better for him than his offensive line, by the sense.
Yeah, apparently so.
I don't know why that's a problem. There's a lot of males in our areas that would love to go back to those days.
No, this is the Commanders. This is Ron is playing for his career, because it would be very difficult, I think, for Ron Rivera to get another head coaching role. And also Sam Howell wants to ensure that he's the starting QB there next year. So the Commanders need this, and the Giants don't need it. Now, there'll be players the Giants will play because Brian Dable will want to win, but ultimately the Commanders actually really do want to win.
Brian, Titans at Jags. Doug Peterson out during the week talking about how Trevor Lawrence's knee injury is hampering him and hampering their offense, and that certainly looked to be the case against San Francisco, not helped by the fact that San Francisco's D looked back to their menacing best coming off that bye. We saw the Jags 5-game winning streak come to an end. Titans not the worst place to be, or not the worst team to be welcoming if you're looking to bounce back, though. Will Levis certainly doesn't look like the generational talent after that 4-touchdown performance in his first outing. And the Titans look a little bit lost right now. I got to say, I'm nailing my colours to the mast early here. I think Jacksonville will come out this one. I think they get back to winning ways. What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, the Titans were very poor last week against the Bucs team. That's our average at best, let's be fair. Like, the last 26, Will Levis was completely off his game for the Irish parents, and he's regressed back to a guy who's going to come into the league and find it difficult to kind of get himself up to speed. And the opening game was very much, we don't know what to expect of him, and Colin rightly called out some of those touchdowns were more bombs as opposed to really kind of precise passing. It's the Jags for me. The Jags have to rebound. Like, you look at the seeding in the AFC. I was looking at the seeding on a separate podcast. Like, the Jags are 6-3, and bearing in mind we've got the Chiefs at home to the Eagles at the weekend, Monday, which could go either way. There is a possibility that come Tuesday morning, you've got the Dolphins 7-3, the Jags 7-3, the Chiefs 7-3. They're very much still in the race.
Steelers could be 7-3 as well.
Well, God, you really have to go there. But, I thought Colin was wearing his Mike Tomlin jumper tonight, man. All it is the crucifix there, and then we really have a. But anyway, look, Jags for me. I think the Jags will win, and I think whilst the Jags have come out the wrong side of some games, I still think they're very much in the race. They've got the Bengals on Monday night in a couple of weeks. That's a huge game. But this game is probably a great bounce-back game for them. But we have seen in the past, in particular this division, the teams on the road tend to find ways to win, which is always bizarre. But in this case, it's the Jags for me.
Colin, historically, feeding King Henry was the path to victory here. And, you must remember that the Jags tends to be the game where Derrick Henry goes off and produces those big explosive 90-yard runs and those 200-yard games. It looks very much like those games may be behind him, and so may the Titans' status as a feared team in the AFC South.
Yeah, but it's up to the Jags to actually go out and win it. And Hanna-Barbera did a Super Friends cartoon, which was a veritable who's who of kind of action heroes. Well, Doug Peterson, it's like Super Friends because he's decided Perez Taylor is going to call the plays because that's what Andy Reid did for him. That has to change. He has to take it back. They look so flat and they're not creative. And it's just, it's going through the motions, it feels. And that's a huge issue because as you point out, Connor, it can be there for them. This is theirs for the taking. And if they don't do that, the Titans can, I know they were bad last week, but divisional games, there's no reason Variable will get them up for it. If the Jags come out flat again, I can see the Titans just dragging them down to their level. And ultimately, I don't want to get in a fight in the mud with Mike Vrabel because he'd shank you. And that's what could well happen to this Jaguars team. I understand why Doug is doing this. I think he thinks it's for Prez Taylor. He's more likely to get a head coaching job. But if they fall here, having everything set up, and it looked like this really should be their year, and they should take a leap forward, it's going to do more damage to everybody. So yes, the Jaguars should win this, but they absolutely need to turbocharge that offense.
And a Jags loss here opens the door for the Texans, who, as we said, are playing the cards. They could close the gap. They go to 6-4 if they win that game. It could get very interesting in the AFC South. Yes, we move to Bucks at Niners. Brian, the Niners rebounded really well last week. It was interesting to see Fred Warner in the locker room saying, we don't make the mistakes of the past. In that locker room after the game, it's one game at a time from here on in, which suggests, kind of shades of what we were talking about with the Cowboys earlier, that they had started to look past games and started to feel themselves a little bit and believe the hype when they were really rolling and when they'd smashed the Cowboys. They looked all the better for the bye week rest. The Bucks, on the other hand, it's not gone well since they had their own winning streak and we're on a bit of a roll. It's Niners for me in this one. What say you?
35-7 last season when Brady was the quarterback there. I think it was one of Brady's going to breakout games. I know he kind of gradually came into the team, and it's hard to see anything other than that type of victory for the Niners. Are they smelling themselves? Are they the team that are going to smell themselves this week, Connor? But you can't see anything other. What we've seen from the Bucs so far is they're beating teams that are probably at their level or a little bit below, and when they come up against the upper echelons, they struggle greatly. And that's going to be the case here. The games in Santa Clara, the Niners would have. I think the bye came at the right time for the Niners. They had the 3 games lost. They kind of got a chance to get back and a bit of a reprieve in the sense of a bit of time off. Let's kind of re-galvanize ourselves. Cotton was concerned last weekend around Trent Williams, and rightly so. But by and large, a lot of the players now are back, and this is where we might see them turn the screw in terms of going for that number 1 seed. And this is a nice game for them, to come in. And the Bucs kind of concern me because we're talking about teams tanking or not tanking, but certainly putting themselves in the jostling position for a quarterback. Where are the Bucs right now? Because they are a team with the defense. They have still have some good players that can beat other teams, and they could find themselves getting themselves out of the situation. And is Baker Mayfield really the long-term answer? They're one of those teams that right now for me are unknown. But in this instance, McCaffrey did score last weekend. I think we'll see him punch the end zone this week.
Yeah. The Bucs, as Brian said, Colin, are in a strange situation. It's a handy enough division, and there is a path out of it for them as there is for every other team in that division because it's so evenly meh. And Baker has looked good. In another scenario, they could have taken that one against the Texans where Stroud led that famous comeback in that instant classic game. And there's some things they do well. As Brian said, defensively, they still look stout against the run. They got one of the better run defenses in the league, and boy, are they going to need to front up at the weekend. I think there are a few more terrifying sights than Trent Williams rubbling towards you, blocking downfield, and Christian McCaffrey breaking people's ankles left and right. If you can shut down CMC, as we know, the 49ers offense looks very different and you got a chance. Is there any way they can do that?
Yogi Bear used to love to tell you that he was smarter than the average bear. Kyle Shanahan, I think, would tell you that he's smarter than the average coach. And he probably is, and sometimes he's too smart for his own good. But the Niners are seriously impressive when they have all of their starters. They're at home. Kyle is still stinging, I think, from that 3-game skid. I talked about it a little bit on Tuesday, like when he talked about the Brock Purdy pass and how it's going to take him time to get over the touchdown pass because he didn't like the process behind it. That tells you everything about Kyle Shanahan. I think they're going to have too much for the Bucs, who, yeah, they have some pieces, and in Tristan Wirfs, they have one of the very best linesmen in the entire league. But they just don't have, outside of Mike Evans, they don't have the horses anymore, and I just don't think they will be able to keep up with this Niners side at home.
All right, that's the end of our second segment of games. We move into our third segment now, and we start with Jets at Bills. Brian, this game went the way of the Jets in the opening game of the season, that infamous game where Aaron Rodgers snapped his Achilles after only four snaps. The Bills sacked Ken Dorsey during the week, as we talked about in our Tuesday Talking Points show. Rightly or wrongly, fairly or unfairly, that's what they've done. They need badly to jumpstart their season. It didn't go their way in New Jersey earlier this season. Is this the one where they get right?
Yes, for me, they should have won the first game if it wasn't for a late, Zach Wilson touchdown. Obviously, the overtime punch to him, but obviously things have moved on quite drastically for both sides over the course of the season. I think we might see a bit of an uplift with Joe Brady coming in. Not necessarily think it's going to be something that will be consistent over the course of the remainder of the season in terms of the offense. I still think it's going to have its struggles. It's up and down each week. I was talking to a Bills fan actually during the week. He's stateside, and he said that yes, people are delighted that Dorsey's gone, and he does listen to the show. He said you're doing a bit of a disservice because you called out all the various different numbers as to why, and it wasn't his fault on the game on Monday. But over the course of that game and over the course of the season, where they have struggled for years is the run game, and the run game has actually been a lot better than people suggested this year with Cook. And on Monday, they got the run game going, then they got away from, then he came back for it. It wasn't a consistent complementary football. That's one of the key things that have been frustrating a lot of Bills fans. And they're kind of glad. They think they'll see something different from Brady, and he's an opportunity. He's got 7 games to kind of try win the row and come forward. And they think there'll be an upward. I think there'll be an upward curve and upward lift, but not necessarily for the remainder of the season with this game, because let's be fair, what we saw it again last Sunday night, Zach Wilson. I mean, what more do we have to say? He's not the answer, and we can listen to. I was going to say Mo Salah. Listen to Robert Salah go up and do all the press conferences he likes, and he can say whatever he likes, but maybe, as Colin said earlier, about get someone off the street. You probably get Mo Salah back there as quarterback. He might do a better job than Zach Wilson. Bills for me. Bounce back game.
Yeah, the Jets column had they had a players only meeting earlier during this week. Michael Carter cut the other story there from the Jets this week. They're making changes, but probably not the right changes to get anything going against the Bills. I, like Brian, can't see any way other than a Bills victory in this one. Jets are a tough watch at the best of times. This is one to watch from behind the couch for fans of offensive football when the Jets are on the ball.
I'm intrigued by Brian's friend in the States who's kind of criticizing and saying, oh, you're not taking into context. Okay, week 1, Josh Allen has a terrible game, loses his mind, keeps throwing the ball away. Week 2, they put 38 on the Raiders. Week 3, they put 37 on the Commanders. Week 4, they put 48 points on the Dolphins. Like, what? And a few weeks later, they're moving off of the OC. Like, come on. Like,
I know
this is insanity that it's Bills fans scrambling around and looking and cognitive dissonance, trying to say that if we do this, like Sean McDermott we've talked about it. He moved off to the DC. He fell out with Brian Dable. He's now moved off of Ken Dorsey. He's blamed everybody, but himself. The Bills are rocking, but like what they needed more than anything was stability. They played a stupid game of football on Monday night. They were absolutely stupid on both sides of the ball. Josh Allen made some dumb plays, which he is prone to do. He also made some brilliant plays. Yeah, they got away from the run game because Cook got stripped of the ball in the first play. Is who made
and
that
then
decision?
Dropped it of his own volition, and very lucky was to get it back, as you said, the Aussie rule style hop.
I mean, but whose decision? Did Sean McDermott have input into that? Because we know McDermott has had input into the offense at times. And if they don't have the 12 men, then I don't think Ken Dorsey's getting sacked. So to me, that just didn't make sense. But equally, they are going up, and the AFC East doesn't make any sense this year because the Jets don't either. I mean, what is going on, Brian? You rightly alluded to it there. What is going on with continuing to play Zach Wilson. Like Salah went on a radio show, not this week, but last week, and was asked point blank, why are you not playing Trevor Siemian? Why do you not go to him? Because the feeling is that he would surely give us a better opportunity. And Salah said he couldn't give an answer. He hummed and hawed and stumbled, and he said, I plead the fifth. I plead the fifth. I mean, like, come on, everybody can see it. Like, and when you are coming out, that's to avoid incriminating yourself. If people are not familiar with the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution, you can plead the fifth in order to avoid incriminating yourself. So what was Salah trying to avoid saying? I feel, I talked about it earlier, I feel for the Browns defense because they're being let down. I feel for a Jets defense that is also, being let down. The Bills at home should have enough, but both of these franchises, I think, have some soul searching to do.
Brian, the Seahawks are at the Rams this week. That's always, again, another very tightly contested divisional clash. The Rams bloodied their nose earlier this season, slightly surprisingly. Rams get Matthew Stafford back, which lines up nicely for a close contest, much closer than might have been the case had Brett Rippon been in a QB. The Rams have flashed at times and looked like they've surprised a few people at various points. Seahawks, on the other hand, have been a little bit up and down. Defensively, they've started to click again over recent weeks after taking a very bad beating against the Ravens. They bounced back well and got one out in difficult circumstances at times against the Commanders. I see this one being a tight one. I still see it probably being a Seahawks win on the road, but you hesitate to pick a winner in this one because it has been such a back and forth one over the years.
Yeah, I think we've always discussed this, the nature of when these two play them. It doesn't matter what the circumstances of each team or the form or what records they have. When it's vice versa, one having a poor season, the other, making waves and going to the playoffs, they always find each other to play each other tough. It's reflective in the odds. You look at the handicap for the game, Connor, -1 for the Seahawks. Again, as you said, I don't think that would have been the case if Matthew Stafford wasn't declared available and coming back and he's practiced fully over the course of this week. I think the Rams are going to regress slightly in terms of, okay, they have some great players who've come in and making a huge impact, and it's great to see. I suppose they were probably quite optimistic about those players, having seen them firsthand in training camps and stuff. But we saw what happened to them when they played against the Cowboys. We saw the struggles even in Green Bay a couple of weeks ago, albeit it wasn't with Matthew Stafford. I don't think they have enough players to consistently go and win these games. I think Seattle need this. They're going to play the 49ers next Thursday night. It'll be a dogfight. I think Seattle just about come out on top.
Colin, one of the reasons Stafford injured, of course, is he's taken a lot of punishment this season. He's taken a lot of punishment throughout his career. But if you've been taking QB hits, if you've been taking sacks, the Seahawks are not the team you want to play. Boye Mafe broke a franchise record last week with his 7th straight game with a sack. The Seahawks, I think, are the 2nd or 3rd in the bag charts this year. They've been getting to the quarterback a lot and causing some damage. That could be one of the keys to this game.
Yeah, no, I think it absolutely could. But I suppose for me, like Sean McVay, it's the Jetsons. It's always looking forward, always looking to try new things. Pete Carroll is Huckleberry Hound. If you remember, Huckleberry used to take on all sorts of different jobs, ended up in space at one point. Pete is kind of this, this is what, the 3rd or 4th iteration of the Seahawks that is out there. I'm surprised, I suppose, that Matthew Stafford is back in some ways, right? And not for the player because he is so tough and he has shown that throughout his career, but he's not just carrying one knock, like he's carrying a number of knocks, and yet they're trotting him back out there. And as you say, Connor, this is a Seahawks side that are very physical, very, very physical. So I am a little bit surprised by that. I think given the fact that it is a divisional matchup, it will be testy, it will be feisty, it will be close. But I do have the Seahawks coming out on top.
Brian, next up is the Sunday night football game, Vikings at Broncos. People making a credible case for this game to be flexed a couple of weeks ago, but be careful what you wish for. You know, you look at it now, and these are arguably the two form teams in the NFL. The Vikings have officially the league's longest winning streak as it stands, five games for them. Broncos pulled out their third win in a row and look like they're starting to get it together and may turn the corner. We'll get the expert view in a moment from the Denver faithful, but this is actually quite an entertaining looking Sunday night football game.
Waiting all day for Sunday night, isn't it? That's what Colin's going to be doing, and it's going to be a difficult day within that household up in Whitehall, because Colin's Colin's wife is a Vikings fan, so they may not want to talk to each other over the course of the day and snuggle up late around 1:20 to watch the game together. But for me, it's the Broncos. This is like a good storyline that we're starting to see in Gather Page. I don't know what it have to be at London and being in the playoffs, but it's given we're seeing the Sean Payton effect for me now. Obviously, Colin rightly called out your Vance Joseph has turned his defense around, bearing in mind what we saw earlier on in the season. But Joshua Dobbs had 2 home games. Like, I'm trying to come up. I have a narrative every week as to why he shouldn't win games, and yeah, he keeps winning games. The first one was, he won the game. But actually, if you looked at his play throughout the course of the game, having come in from Hall, he wasn't great, but he got it over the line in the last minute. Last week, I didn't think he'd have enough within a week to get himself ready, but by now he should be well prepared. But it's still Joshua Dobbs for me. It's Sunday night football going into Denver, and in the primetime games in particular. And it hasn't been so great of late because obviously the difficulty in terms of the performance. But in this instance, where they are right now, I think they'll have more enough defensively to do a number on Joshua Dobbs and put themselves in a position to win this game. Ultimately, it'll come down to whether the game manager quarterback that we have in Denver, as opposed to the one that was brought in, and they're just enough to get them over the line. But no, I think Williams in particular, running back, will be the leading light here. Run them to a victory, as opposed to Russell Wilson being the man that wins them the game. Broncos for me.
Broncos for you. Okay, interesting, because the Vikings have been my bet noir over recent weeks. It was the Steelers. Every time I called the Steelers to lose, they pulled one out. And the Vikings, I thought, like you, the Joshua Dobbs thing would be one and done, and we wouldn't see a second week. But everything seems to be going well in Minnesota at the moment, which again, by the narrative of this season, means that this might be the game when they crash down to earth.
Broncos are favourites, Connor. Just throw that one in there. Yeah.
Well, I'm getting there. And the one interesting thing at the weekend, touchdown pass from Wilson to Cortland Sutton after the scramble was, according to Next Gen Stats, and Next Gen Stats is not in existence that long, so I don't want to overstate the case here, but it's only since 2017. In the history of Next Gen Stats, that is the most improbable touchdown pass by completion. Expected completion percentage on that play was 3.2%. Cortland Sutton makes an unbelievable grab. The throw was half decent, but the ball was thrown up in the air. It should have been incomplete. It could easily have been a pick. Cortland Sutton makes an unbelievable grab. The Broncos have the run game going. I think defensively they've looked a lot better. Peyton is getting Wilson to do the things that you want late stage career Russell Wilson to do. Plus, the scrambling ability has been there. We talked about Russell looking an awful lot fitter. Russell's put in the work. There's some signs of the old Russell there when you need it. But for the most part, he's done what he's been told to do. And, his yards per attempt, his yards per completion are way down on his peak, yes, but he's completing passes. He's moving the ball up the field, and it's been working a lot better the last couple of weeks. The Josh Dobbs show finally has to run out of steam, I feel. And I actually think this is the place where it's going to happen. I'm a little bit reluctant to call against Brian Flores' defense, because I think they can cause a lot of trouble. And he's being talked about as a potential assistant coach of the year. We've talked at length at times on what he's done to turn around that defense, which was their big Achilles heel last season, and they've done brilliantly to paper over the cracks, not having Justin Jefferson there, as we've talked about. But I think it comes to an end in Denver on Sunday night. Colin, what do you think?
You're both very confident in the Broncos, which coming off the back, obviously you beat the Bills and you beat the Chiefs, but I think in both games they beat the name. Like, Patrick Mahomes was clearly suffering a flu. The Bills found a way. Like, if they didn't have 12 men on the field, how differently would everyone feel about the Broncos right now? And so that my concern is that the Bills defense has been terrible over the past few weeks, whereas the Vikings defense hasn't. So I think ultimately this is going to come down to, can Russ find a way against the blitz, because Brian Flores is blitzing at almost 3 times the rate of the next highest in the league. So it's like they're playing a different sport, and I think that will be fascinating. Russ should be experienced enough to do that, and I do think Javonte Williams is a key to this. There's also the fact that I suppose the Chiefs offense has struggled a little bit through, over the past few weeks. So I do take that into consideration. And the Bills that had their own issue. But having Justin Simmons back makes a real difference. And I think he probably hasn't gotten the kudos that he deserves. I think also moving on from guys like it's interesting. I think there are a number of factors to it. I think it's a testament sometimes to stuff we don't see. Like getting Frank Clark and Randy Gregory out of the locker room has only been a good thing. Having Kareem Jackson not be able to play because he's suspended has actually been a good thing. Because they're at home and because of
it's a long time since we've seen someone almost decapitated on a football field. I'd actually forgotten he was suspended.
Yeah, there you go. No Kareem Jackson. Now I will say it was funny because there was a hit to the head on Sutton during Monday night's game, and there were quite a few Broncos fans were highlighting this. But a lot of those were the same people who said Kareem Jackson apparently hadn't done anything wrong a few weeks before. So that's always interesting to me. And that's not just Broncos fans. That tends to be all fans can't lose their objectivity. Brian would never, ever do such a thing, of course. But I'm going to go probably heart over head here. I do think the Vikings are going to cause all sorts of issues for the Broncos. I do think they're a defense that the Broncos haven't faced, but at home, Sean Payton seems to have the team playing really well, and Javonte and P. Ryan have been a really effective kind of 1-2 punch. So I'm gonna go for the Broncos to win, but I think that they're probably gonna have to score. They're gonna have to score more points than they have at any point in the course of the season in order to do so.
Broncos sweep. Who'd have thunk it? Now we saved the best till last, Brian. Eagles at Chiefs. What a Monday Night Football matchup to have. Repeat of the Super Bowl. Both teams flying high, although the Chiefs down by the Broncos in recent weeks, as Colin was just pointing out there. Do we get a different result from the Super Bowl?
Yes, for me. I think the Eagles will go in and take care of business in this game, predominantly down to the fact that we've yet to see the Chiefs really flourish offensively. And I was listening to Peter King's podcast last week. He had the opportunity to interview Mahomes straight after the game in Frankfurt, in which he said, "We are going to get this corrected. You can guarantee that." And in all likelihood, they might get it corrected and they might resolve the issues. And we probably not likely would see them, potentially in the Super Bowl, certainly in the championship game. But they've had 2 weeks off now to get it right. And I'm looking at the players, I'm looking at the numbers, and with the exception of week 6 and week 7, where one of them was against the Broncos, and I can't recall the other game. I think it might have been the Bears game. Kelsey went over 100 yards in both those games. They've not done that since with a player, an offensive player in terms of receiver or tight end, and he is the only player that's done that for them this season. That concerns me. And you've been calling them for weeks, Connor. They don't have the players at their disposal offensively.
31 targets more than any other receiver on their team. Your tight end has 31 targets more than anyone else.
Says it all. But we can call him son firsthand. He was non-existent in that game in Frankfurt. He goes from so high where he's unplayable, and then there's games where essentially either they take him out of playbook or they just can't get him going whatsoever. So it's a very interesting one. I think the Eagles offensively will put up points, and then you're asking the question: do I think Chiefs could do the same? And I don't think they can in this where they are right now in the season. I think the Eagles go in and win, and I'll probably be here on Tuesday morning going to go, what was I thinking? Because it's the Chiefs on home Arrowhead Monday night. Spagnuolo will navigate a victory with a defensive performance, and maybe that's the case. But for me, I'm leaning Eagles right now because of where both teams are in the season.
Yeah, I'm going the same way. I have to say, I wasn't impressed by what I saw of the Chiefs in Frankfurt either. I was watching that game on television. Obviously, I know you guys were there, but it's not clicking. I know Mahomes has been trying very hard. Andy Reid has been trying very hard. They've clearly been consciously trying to spread the ball around, and it's not quite working. Defensively, they've been lights out. We've talked about their secondary in particular, and McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed have been unbelievable. Two of the best performing defensive backs. Sneed, the definition of the lockdown corner. His battle with AJ Brown is going to be explosive. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. And the Eagles have tended to find ways to pick on even the best cornerbacks in the league, and Brown, probably with the exception of CeeDee Lamb, is the form receiver at the moment. But I just think the Eagles have so many ways they can beat you. The Chiefs really don't anymore. And you feel kind of weird backing against Patrick Mahomes because he is the way to beat any team, and he's proven it time and time again. If they meet by the end of the season, if they meet in the Super Bowl, which is the only way they can meet again, I might think very differently on it. And the Chiefs have a record of figuring these things out over the course of the season. You can see them working very hard at it at the moment in their lab. But I don't think it comes right for them in this game. I think the Eagles are just in a better place. They look to me like that classic veteran team that knows exactly what it needs to do to navigate through the regular season, and they'll come alive in the playoffs. I think they've got plenty more potential in them. I don't think they've looked anything like emptying the tank so far this year. I think, but they're going to have targeted this game. I think they'll want to put down a marker as well. I mean, they were so close to winning that Lombardi earlier this year, and I think they'll want to come out of Arrowhead with a win because they'll want to leave the Chiefs thinking with something just in case they face them in the finale again this year. Colin.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with everything you've both said, which hasn't been the case for a lot of the evening. But in this instance, I think, I think the Chiefs really are struggling now. They've had the time, and they really can go in, to the lab, and we've seen them come out. But I do think things just aren't quite right there at the moment. They'll probably be fine come January. But the Eagles have all sorts of ways to beat you. And the Dolphins, if they had more gumption, I think could have gone and won that game in Germany. I think the Eagles have that. I think they have the belief. And I think that they will want this one, right? They know that they came out onto the field before the second half started, and I think everyone thought it was going to be their Super Bowl, and ultimately they weren't the ones lifting the Lombardi at the end. I think they get the victory in this one. But if you are a Chiefs fan, and there are quite a few of them, Neil Blair and others, the good news is that probably means that Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs are winning it, because all three of us have picked the Eagles.
Well, the even better news is that we have that game to look forward to at the end of week 11. It's a great way to wrap it up, and that wraps up our week 11 preview show.